Hello and welcome back to another wonderful day here at MSA. So glad to see you. Glad you could make it. Now today we're going to jump right into what we're going to talk about because it has to do with President Joe Biden. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of connections here between Biden and the Chinese Communist Party. It's insane. It really is. Now, listen, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to, be a cuddlebug about it or worried if this video is going to get suppressed, because there's some things in this video that you need to see that is just laying around out there that a lot of people don't get to see because there's suppression all over the place. Now, if you're watching us on Rumble, and I hope you are, we're a small channel and we're trying to grow. So do us a favor, hit that follow button down there. Give us a thumbs up and share this, especially if watch this video. And if you know anybody that's a Biden supporter, send this to them and tell them, watch this. See how much they support Biden afterwards. There's some things you're going to hear in here and you're going to go, oh yeah, we've heard a little bit about this. Trust me, at the end of this video, I'm going to play a little segment in here that has to do with what we call the map. And when you see that, you're going to be like, what? I haven't heard anything about this. The reason you haven't heard anything about the map is because you can't find it all over the place. You have to know what you're looking for in order to get to it. And you'll see when we play that clip, but that's going to be in just a little bit. Before we get to that, we're going to play another clip right off the bat that has to do with Mark Levine, and he's talking to a guy by the name of Peter Schweizer. Now, Schweizer is an investigative journalist, and this guy doesn't talk about stuff that isn't factual. And when I say factual, I mean that there's proof, massive proof. He has a team of people that work with him. This is what they do. And they go out and they find stuff. And Schweizer, of course, just wrote a book based on all of this stuff that's got some really damning evidence in it. And it's going to be released on this Tuesday. And if we can, we're going to link a link down at the bottom in our description that'll take you to it. We'll see if we can. We might not be able to, but hey, either way, going forward, we're going to listen to Mark Levine talking to Peter Schweizer about Joe Biden and the involvement with what's going on with fentanyl at the moment. So we'll be right back. Hang in there. We'll see you in just a second.
There is no better journalist who uncovers really seedy muck in our government and by certain populations than Peter Schweizer. And it's always an honor to have Peter on the program as an exclusive guest when he has a new book coming up. He doesn't just put out books. His books, his team does an enormous amount of research. They back it up with facts and footnotes, and it's always jaw-dropping. And his new book, Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans, is stunning. It's stunning in the breadth to which Communist China owns our government. It's stunning in the extent to which it affects our society. It is stunning by the fact that we have a president of the United States and a family, as Peter has reported before, that basically has taken tens of millions of dollars from this government, which I think is one of the reasons why they don't stand up to Communist China. Peter Schweizer, welcome. I want to jump right into your book. We're not going to be able to cover the whole thing. But if you get any book, this is the book you need to get, and the sooner the better. It comes out on Tuesday. Let's start with China's foot soldiers. China's foot soldiers in America. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, you look at a situation like the fentanyl crisis. It's killing 100,000 Americans a year. And a lot of people know that the precursors come from China. What they don't know is that China's involved in every single chain in this link that leads to the death of Americans. The precursors come to a port, the port of Manzanillo in Mexico. It's run by a Chinese company. They send those precursors up to a small border town in Mexico where 2,000 Chinese nationals help them turn it into fentanyl. They take pill presses that are imported from China that are sold to the drug cartels at cost by the Chinese. They make these pills. They then bring them across the border into the United States. Now, the Mexican cartels need a way to communicate securely, Mark. They use Chinese apps and Chinese communication devices because they know the Chinese will not share that information with American law enforcement. And finally, when these drug cartels collect all this money, They used to launder, back in the old days with cocaine, they used to launder those profits in Latin American banks. Today, they launder them in Chinese banks. So the fentanyl crisis is completely one that is delivered from China. And the problem is our political leaders, people like Joe Biden, people like Gavin Newsom, people like Adam Schiff, have ties, they have entanglements to some of the networks that are involved in this process, money laundering, etc. If you just look at Joe Biden, for example, Mark, the Chinese gangster that set up the Sinaloa cartel with fentanyl, made them the kings of fentanyl, is a guy named Zhang Anlo. He goes by the name White Wolf. White Wolf has a business partner. That business partner gave the Biden family $5 million. So does Joe Biden really want to have a conversation about Chinese involvement in the fentanyl crisis? He does not, and his policies show it.
Well, you saw the clip. Now, in that clip, did you notice what was going on? They were talking about fentanyl, where it's coming from, how it's getting here. Okay, all the precursors are coming out of China. See, it used to be a lot of people back in the day would go to Canada or down to Mexico and pick up certain things, bring them into the United States, or they'd go to Colombia and pick up actual coke and all that other stuff. And they'd bring things into the country. So what's going on now is China is selling all the precursors for fentanyl to the drug cartels in Mexico. China has, as they said, 2,000 Chinese nationals down there working in Mexico to oversee the making of all this fentanyl. They've sold the press to them, all the presses that they need to make all these pills and all this kind of stuff, and it's all coming in through our open border because Joe Biden has an open border policy, right? We all know this. We've heard this 1,000 times. Have you heard that since October, in California alone, at their border, since October, they've had over 21,000 Chinese nationals come through that are all of military-age men. These aren't families seeking asylum. These are Chinese military men. Why are we letting Chinese military-age men into our country openly like it's some kind of gift? How did they get out of China? You just walked out of China? China was like, oh, okay, you're going to leave. Go ahead. I don't understand that. Communism doesn't work that way. Okay? It really doesn't. Now, you hear about, again, we just talked about the fentanyl issue, but then you hear about the person that is the most involved from China with the fentanyl and the cartels that started all this, and that his business partner is the one that gave Joe Biden $5 million. Or, excuse me, the Biden family $5 million. For what? For what? What did they do? It doesn't make any sense anymore. There is no Biden business. Hunter would be doing that business right now. And during all the time that they made all of their money, Hunter was a massive drug addict. He was not functional. His pictures and movies of him all over the internet doing all kinds of stuff. His teeth being replaced because he smoked his teeth out with smoking so much crack. I mean, all kinds of things. So what is this brand? James Biden's the same way. James Biden's been claiming he's been doing business for tons of years for the Biden family. And what? You don't own a dental office. You don't have, you're not a consultant of any kind of. You're an influence peddler, and we're learning that. But listen, we're going to continue on going on with another clip because it's obvious that Joe Biden has connections. You also heard Gavin Newsom's name mentioned in there. Had to do with when he was a mayor of San Francisco, and one of the people that he appointed into his cabinet was actually directly connected to the CCP, which is the Chinese Communist Party, if you're not familiar with the CCP. You also heard Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff did similar things. He's got contribution money that's went into towards his campaigns, things that while, the people that were giving him the money are being investigated by the FBI, they are definitely known to be a part of the CCP. And it's one of the reasons why you hear these people support Biden so heavily. It's another reason why you never hear anything come from Joe Biden's mouth when it comes to China. You never hear him taking away, you want to bring back America. He talks about, see, I get all twisted up about this. Biden talks about how we're at the lowest unemployment rate we could possibly be. In what? Fast food? Warehouse jobs? I know tons of kids that are legal working age and just older that are just pulling their hair out because there's nowhere to go except fast foods, warehouses, things of that nature. Half the companies out there want you to have a degree or at least 15 years experience in order to do certain things. A lot of companies out there, because the economy is doing so crappy with all this inflation, they don't want to hire kids to bring them in as apprentices because they don't have enough money. Look at how they raised minimum wage up everywhere. And notice how all the fast food places are so far behind all the time because they have a minimum staff, because they have to make the same amount of money. It's just that the payroll's gotten higher. They can't have 6 people working at a time. They can only have 4. Anyway, back to the whole thing with the Bidens. This is another clip that we're going to roll real quick that has, I believe it's Jim Jordan talking about some things on the Oversight Committee. They had just interviewed James Biden, and James Biden was conflicted with things in the way he answered compared to Tony Bobolinsky and Devin Archer and some of the other folks that have testified. But the question that the reporter asks is very important because it's something we're talking about right now. So we're going to go ahead and go with that clip, and we'll be right back.
Are you going to ask Hunter Biden what the business was? Because, looking at all of these millions of dollars that you have identified that have gone to Biden family members, begs the question, what were they paying for?
Yeah, they were paying for the brand, access to the brand. The brand was Joe Biden. We knew that from Devin Archer, who was Hunter Biden's business partner. We knew that we got that when Devin Archer was in his deposition back last summer. So everyone knows it was access to the brand. Best example is Hunter Biden and his business partners are working with CEFC, these 8 individuals from China. They're trying to close this deal. It doesn't get finalized. The agreement doesn't get done until they're at the Four Seasons restaurant and Joe Biden does a drop-in, stops in and sees Hunter Biden, his business partners, and the 8 individuals from CEFC, the 8 Chinese individuals. They're there at the lunch. Joe Biden gets in, makes a short presentation, and then leaves. Then a few weeks later, that's when the $3 million wire comes into Hunter Biden. That was the brand coming in to close the deal. That's how this whole thing operated.
Okay, you got to see the clip. Now, you heard Jim Jordan talking right off the bat about, what the brand was. Because we all know there is no business involved here. You don't have 20 shell companies and all that you're trying to run, and all the money goes through there, and it's getting filtered all over the place, and you actually have a product that you're working on. Okay, you just don't. So let's just stop the nonsense, get rid of all the crap that we keep hearing, and all the defense mechanisms that every single type of Democratic senator or congressman try to throw at everybody to push the trail away. Okay, let's get into what they're actually talking about. When James Biden gave his deposition recently, one of the questions, of course, was about the money that came from AmeriCorps, how it went into James Biden's account, and immediately he wrote a check to Joe, and he said that, that was a loan repayment. Well, the money that he got from AmeriCorps was a loan, quote unquote, and the reason they keep saying that these are all loans is because when you get a loan, you don't have to pay taxes on it, okay? It's not traced through the IRS the way everything else is traced. All right. Now, AmeriCorps, you say, well, yeah, but that's a healthcare company, and currently the government's investigating them over Medicare fraud. Right. Okay. What we fail to remember is the fact that Joe Biden was handed healthcare by Obama near the end of the presidency. So, of course, why do you think AmeriCorps wanted to talk to James Biden? Because James Biden promised them, I'm sure, favors. But hey, let's get back into the whole Biden and the China corruption and the whole shebang. Okay, CEFC, what does that stand for? It stands for Clean Energy Financial Corporation. Keywords: financial. That being the key word, what you say, well, what do they do? Well, they're based out of China. Now they're based out of Shanghai, but they're based out of China. And what they do is they stored large amounts of oil and natural gas. They also had financial services, quote unquote, that they're proud of. And you're going to understand a lot about how all this played in together when we play the clip in a minute about the map. Now let's talk about what's going to happen here. You got 8 individuals that Jim Jordan talked about that from CEFC that were at the Four Seasons restaurant, and Joe Biden comes through, and boom, next thing you know, Hunter Biden receives over $3 million from these guys. Is that the same $3 million that President Trump was talking about at the end of the debate to Joe Biden and kept saying, why don't you tell him where the $3.5 million came from, Joe? Why don't you tell him where the $3.5 million came from, Joe? And Joe Biden got all mad, called him a clown, and almost got in trouble for that. Is that the money he's talking about? See, Trump knew and knows a lot. And one of the things he does talk about is the fact that he has respect for the presidency and he doesn't try to shovel dirt on him, because it would just make our country look stupid to the rest of the world. Kind of like half of what's going on now. But back into it. We're going to roll the clip for the map. Pay close attention to this because it's very important. This is something that you don't find all over the place. You're not going to find all over the place, and it is suppressed because it's very real and valid. So hang on just a second. We're going to play that clip.
As part of our investigation, we have evidence that the finances, credit cards, and bank accounts of Hunter and Joe Biden were commingled, if not shared. And on some accounts, at least, red flags were raised by banks to the account owner or owners indicating suspicious or illegal activity. One of Hunter's closest associates, Eric Sherwin, was accessing Joe Biden's money and writing checks to reimburse Hunter. Sherwin arranged the Biden's international deals around the world. At the same time, he was a frequent visitor to the White House and Joe Biden during the Obama administration, visiting close to 30 times and sometimes with international business partners and Hunter, according to Hunter's calendar. Sherwin was also the president of Hunter's company and was appointed by President Obama to a position in the administration. After an apparent falling out with Sherwin, Hunter began coordinating business himself, and increasingly the deals brought in Joe Biden as a direct equity holder. One of these deals involves the sale of American natural gas to China. Evidence suggests Joe Biden had a 10% equity stake through his son. And behind Glenn and Andrew is a map from Hunter's laptop. This was a PowerPoint presentation on his laptop in Chinese that they used in working with the Chinese. Now, let's think about this for a second. At a time when Americans are suffering from high energy prices because of this administration's terrible energy policy, we find evidence that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were involved in a scheme to try to get China to buy liquefied natural gas, and from a whistleblower to try to get their foot in the door with China starting to purchase an interest in natural gas drillers. Now, people are in outrage over China buying farmland in the Dakotas. What about China starting to buy into our American energy industry at a time when we have an energy crisis because of the bad policies of the Biden administration? Now, let that sink in. Hunter brought in millions of dollars from this deal from entities tied to the Chinese government. In emails obtained by committee Republicans, Hunter wanted keys made for Joe Biden and Jim Biden, his office mate. He provided Joe Biden's personal cell number and called him his partner. The other partners in that deal were two people closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party. And that's behind Andy and Jim, that's the email where Hunter sent to the landlord requesting keys, and the Chinese partners were on the email, and where he said, Joe would need a key, and he even put Joe's cell phone number on there. Domestically, Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother, used the Biden name to enrich himself in return for the promise that when Joe Biden became president in 2020, business partners would get rich by having access to a future Biden administration. By promising access to financing through Middle Eastern, Russian, and Chinese connections he made through Joe Biden, and by bringing his brother Joe Biden onto phone calls, Jim Biden was able to convince companies to give him loans of hundreds of thousands of dollars that he never repaid. The Biden administration has answered none of our requests for information regarding the Biden family or the financial transactions they engaged in. Instead, the Biden administration has spent over $250,000 to staff to, quote, deflect Hunter stories. Protecting the president's son who has committed crimes with Americans' tax dollars is a waste. The domestic and international scheme that promised access to wealth in a future Biden administration constitute fraud. And the president's participation in enriching his family is, in a word, abuse of the highest order. Rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse will be the primary goal of a Republican House Oversight Committee.
You got to see the map. What'd you think of that? A map of the United States in Mandarin showing all of our drilling sites and areas available for drilling of liquid natural gas. One of the things that CEFC does is store mass amounts of liquid natural gas. Isn't it funny how in the Biden administration, we have the Secretary of Energy, they petition to have her salary reduced to $1 because of the fact she is not giving out any of these permits for companies to be able to get permitted to go onto this land and drill for oil and natural gas and all that stuff. She's not been doing that. You know, case in point, last year they raised a question about how come we've only given out 100 permits when normally in a year's span, we've given out over 1,800 permits. Okay, we've only given out 100. And now we're becoming massively dependent on foreign countries' oil supplies and things of that nature. But we happen to also be the number one supplier of the best liquid natural gas in the world. Comes from us. And now you see this thing in Mandarin, which was a PowerPoint presentation, so Hunter Biden could turn around and sell off parts of American land, which was going to start in Louisiana, I believe it was. They're going to sell off parts of Louisiana or parts of American land so the Chinese could come in and steal our energy, get our liquid natural gas, and probably sell it back to us. Isn't that great? That make you feel warm and fuzzy? These are the things about the Bidens that you're not hearing about. Okay? That email that they showed in there was Hunter asking for the name of the business outside their door to read Hudson West. CEFC US. That's what that was for. And that his business partner, Joe, Jill, and Jim were also going to need keys, along with the two Chinese business partners were also going to need keys to the office so they could all do business together. Isn't that insane? And it had Joe Biden's cell phone number on there as a contact. So if Joe is not part of anything, why is his cell phone number on there? Is that just an accident? A coincidence? I think not. I think this whole thing has been one of the biggest scandals probably in American history. And we all get to sit back and get little bits and pieces because the Department of Justice isn't going to do anything about it. The FBI knows all about it, and they're not doing anything about it. You have the oversight committees that are starting to get traction on doing things about it. But you also have people, now, and I'm not going to get crazy on this, I'm just going to throw it out there. You have people like George Soros, who are a humongous influencer on the WEF, World Economic Forum, who wants a singular government worldwide. They want to do away with, everything that we enjoy. They pretty much want to do away with. They don't want us to have meat. They want us to be dependent on them. The whole shebang. George Soros also owns the Alphabet. It's called Alphabet Inc., who is a shareholder of Google, who also owns YouTube. And then you wonder how these PPPs, these private public partnerships, can use their terms of conditions to censor what you hear. Because what that was that you get to see on that map is definitely censored from what you get to hear. Mark Levine talking about half the things he talks about gets pushed down. Unfortunately, he has a lot of viewers, so they can't just push him all the way out. Jim Jordan and James Comer fight on a daily basis to try to bring things forward. And if it wasn't for actual real news companies watching some of the things that go on with the oversight committee and everything, Forbes plays all of it. Plays all of it, if you could find it. But, I commend them for that. But if it wasn't for people like us bringing it to you and you helping us spread this to everybody, nobody's going to know. And then what? And you say, well, Biden's an old man. He's losing his memory. He's doing this. Why do you think he had all those documents at his house? You think that was just by chance? He was a senator. Then he was a vice president. You can't have those. We've already covered this. We should all know this by now. It's amazing how certain people are getting away with things, and you always hear about this two-tier justice system. And why do you think it is? Because they know people like Donald Trump are going to come back in and crush this. Crush it heavily. That's why you get people like Adam Schiff and Jamie, whatever his name is, I can't remember off the top of my head, Raskin, that come in and just lie, and tear everything apart and try to throw everybody off the trail. Because as long as everybody keeps spinning everything, this stuff doesn't get out there as fast as it should. And China keeps getting away with everything they need to get away with. And what do you think they're doing with all that money? You know, that money we're borrowing is probably the laundered money that's coming from the cartels. That's why it's so readily available. Wouldn't that be just ironic? Right? Anyway, do us a favor. Hit the follow button. Share this thing, especially if you got Biden supporters out there. Do me a favor and share it. Share it to everybody. Let people see this. Help our channel grow. This thing should be going out to everybody. Because it's not just me saying, oh, I want to grow my channel. This is the stuff you don't get to see. And you'll never see this on MSNBC. You'll never see this on CNN, NBC, ABC. None of those people are going to touch it. Because we don't have real reporters anymore out there. Except for a few people at Newsmax and some of the Fox guys. That'll do it. That'll touch it. But when it comes to really crushing stuff, only you can help get that out there. So anyway, I hope you're having the best day, night, whatever it is, wherever you're at. And we love each and every one of you. And thank you for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing you again. Our next segment that's coming up is going to be another really interesting one. Trust me, you're going to enjoy it. So look forward to seeing you then. Take care.